workshop spaces. Okay, over 30 events, 500 speakers, 3,000 sponsors, and 100,000 over attendees, all under one roof. A fine event brought to you by Fine Expo, pun intended, okay? Having said that, we also like to express our gratitude towards our sponsors for making BlockChain Fest a reality for us. BlockChain Fest 2022 is powered by Bybit. And this is where you guys applause every time. Okay, by Bybit. Our grand sponsor is Fireblocks. Platinum sponsors are Fellas, ChainUp, and JPEGs. Can be louder. Gold sponsors Amber, CoinStore, Anchor Finance, CR Square, and of course other co-sponsors Revolve Gamers, FXbox.io, OZ Finance, Bitcoin Win, and last but not least, the welcome party venue sponsor, Mason Ikoku. So thank you, Fine Expo, and all our sponsors for made this fantastic event happen. Okay, I see you guys all ready and excited. Oh man, let's do that once again. Is everyone all ready and excited for our first panel discussion? Yes. Okay, let me warm you guys up, baby. Sometimes I need to hype up. Let's do some icebreaker. Are you all ready to because we don't want to be a typical boring one. We want to be more exciting and fun. So can I get everyone to stand up? Can I get everyone to stand up? Come. Okay. My name is Sugan, by the way, once again. Hi everyone, Sugan. Okay, so I'm a full-time MC. Part-time, I'm a Shaolin monk. So today, I'm going to show you an early morning session of Tai Chi to bring in the good chi. All right, so are you all ready? Okay, nice. First and foremost, horse riding style. Legs, spread your legs a bit. If you're wearing a skirt, tight skirt, don't need to spread too much, okay? All right, bend your knees a bit. All right, so this is how it happens, okay? This is going to do a Tai Chi. So relax your shoulders. Imagine you are drawing a big watermelon. This is a watermelon. Slow and steady. Tai Chi is about slow and steady. Big watermelon. You come to the end. Now you cut the watermelon. Once you cut the watermelon, you push the watermelon away. This one is for you. This piece you take. Okay, the other piece I will take. Then again, we push this piece over there. This piece is for you. This watermelon piece is for you. This one is for me. You get that? Okay, but the watermelon later we cut into 4 pieces. Okay, first one you cut, then we cut again, then we push. Already? All okay, So, Mr. Joe, can we have some music a bit? All right, ready? Here we go, everyone. Watermelon, big one. Slow and steady. Nice big watermelon. Nice slow. Nice big one. You cut in the center, one piece. Slow and steady. Cut another piece. Okay, then you push. This one is for you. Say it. This piece is for me. Okay, we're going to push out all the negativity. All negativity, push it out. For you. Good one for me. We're going to bring in positivity. We're going to be learning a lot of good stuff. Push away all the bad thoughts. Push it all away. Today, we are learning a lot of good stuff about blockchain and everything else. Yes. Once again, one big watermelon. Big and nice. Juicy watermelon. Cut in the center. Now push it with a power. Wait, no sound one. Once again, push it away. Pull in. Good stuff. Nice. And then another piece. I will take this piece. All right, give yourself a big round of applause. Nice. Now you guys are all certified Kung Fu masters. Okay, take a seat, everyone. Be seated. Okay, so we're going to start off with our first panel of discussion for the day, okay? It's called Future of Digital Money and Asset Governance and Law. Okay, so I'd like to invite our moderator, Ronald J.J. Wong, Director of Covenant Chambers, LLC. Clap hands. Our speakers, Andy Meehan, Chief Compliance Officer, Gemini APAC, sorry. Shaun Tham, Legal Director at ChainUp. Collin, Cheong, Director of Corporate Development at Coinhako. Gentlemen, are you all ready? The mic's, okay, you can turn on the mic.
Hello. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Ronald JJ Wong, Covenant Chambers. On my left, Andy Meehan. On my right, Shaun Tham. And further to the right, Collin Cheong. So without further ado, I'm just going to go straight into this panel because we've, I think, got really good insights that we want to talk about and share. So I think, talking about regulations, one key question that often arises is, well, you know, in traditional finance, there are obviously already clear sets of regulations, frameworks. And I think the question that arises is whether regulatory frameworks that apply to traditional finance, TradFi, can effectively be and should be applied to DeFi, decentralized finance. And so I think with this first question, maybe I just want to invite one of our panelists, maybe Collin, to just share some thoughts first, and then I'll invite the rest of the panelists to chime in. Collin.
All right, thanks, Ronald. So I think, decentralized finance and the decentralized space is, very much different from what we're seeing in the traditional markets right now. So some regulations that we have in place might not probably fit, right? So I think what regulators around the world are doing right now is really to find ways to tailor the existing regulations to fit that model. And I think to a certain extent, we have been quite successful. So there are certain tenets in the decentralized space which, certain issues we see in the decentralized space, which we also see in the traditional markets. So for example, fund running, market manipulation, and when the profits get high, there's usually a tendency for markets to maybe move in a unsavory direction. So without having a set of rules or regulations that would help manage these issues, unfortunately, it will not take off, right, the decentralized space. So I think all of us, or at least myself in the crypto space, we recognize that, and which is why I think, at least as a company, Coinhako is very focused on ensuring that we work well with the regulators to find ways to at least develop regulations with them and practical regulations and be regulated in the right way. Yeah.
Thanks, Collin. I think you talked about market conduct. We were just discussing how this morning we read the news about OpenSea, an ex-product head, being indicted in the US, purportedly for market conduct, front running, and so on. But we did note that actually the laws that apply in that case most likely is not really the security laws, and in fact, most likely in Singapore as well, given that a lot of the stuff that's happening on DeFi are not really treated in the same way as you would with capital markets products. I think a lot of the policing, as it were, then falls on the private players rather than central regulators and so on. Any other thoughts from the other panelists? Andy?
Sure. So
I think your mic's not on. Tried it. Yeah.
working? Yes, there we go. So I think that what we see in this space right now is regulators and the industry trying to work with the only framework that we have, and that's the one for traditional finance. It's been kind of the only game in town from, at least globally, from, you could probably look back earlier, but say September 11th is really when it kicked off to be a more international standard with the FATFA requirements and whatnot. I don't think there's any disagreement that the general framework is something that ought to apply to any product, including the cryptocurrency industry. I think the questions are more, what's the best mechanisms to enforce that kind of framework? Is it the kind of policies and controls that have been applicable for traditional financial products, or can blockchain technology add something to that process, or is it different in a way that makes the cryptocurrency industry need to find new ways of regulating or take advantage of technologies that didn't exist when the traditional financial regulations were rolled out, decades ago, to better be able to oversee, the challenges of this industry. Everyone's working towards that. Yeah, I think one of the difficulties has been cryptocurrency and blockchain has accelerated so quickly in the last few years, it's difficult to keep up. And so when you're faced with the challenge of regulating something with a platform that might not be perfect, but at least is in existence, and not having anything at all, the only choice is to try to use what's already there and make it fit. And I think everyone on this stage and the vast majority of the community, industry players and regulators alike, are trying to do just that.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I echo that. I think serious players in this industry want to get these things right, and I think the key distinctive, obviously, with regard to anything blockchain, crypto, and the Web3 is really the tech element, right? The technology, and so we need to compare then TradFi, DeFi, the tech aspects, the regulatory aspects with regard to that, as opposed to what's traditional. Perhaps there is a mentality that we also need to address, which is that it's sort of assumed that TradFi is going to be safer and better regulated, but the fact is that money laundering and so on have been happening, right, in TradFi spaces, right? You do actually see in Singapore and many other jurisdictions that there are financial institutions who fall afoul of such regulatory concerns, and then. So when we compare, on the other hand, what we have in blockchain space, the fact is that the technology actually enables perhaps better regulatory concerns being addressed because of the technology. So Shaun, maybe you could speak about this topic.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. So I think my fellow speakers have actually covered quite a lot, right? And I will not repeat what they said, but my perspective, I think when it comes to DeFi regulation in particular, right? I think industry players, regulators, they're all starting to realize this already. You can't take a template from traditional finance and apply it in a decentralized model, right? It just doesn't work. Right? So what we are seeing, for example, is even when it comes to things like AML and KYC, right? From the perspective of, let's say, a DeFi operator, right? A decentralized exchange that is really just dealing with counterparties, right? On a blockchain, a bunch of numbers and alphabets, right? Just a wallet address. Even if you wanted that wallet address to, for example, perform KYC, right? To submit a KYC documents, right? How do you even start, right? Doing that, right? So there are, I think, technical limitations, first of all, right? That the industry as a whole and the regulators as well, I think are starting to come to terms with, right? And I do believe that things will continue to evolve, right? Hopefully in the right direction, right? Where, I think regulation is definitely needed, right? But what we would like to see, I think, is, first of all, it needs to recognize the technical limitations of what we can and cannot do, right? And also, the regulatory approach has to be very different because, unlike a centralized kind of market, centralized economy, where the financial regulators can control everything, or when they ban something, they can just ban it, right? When you try and ban something in the DeFi world, right, we've already seen what happens, right? They just move to more friendly jurisdictions, right? Yeah, so I think it's all about balancing, right? And it's about having a practical approach to regulation. Yeah.
Thanks, Shaun. So far, we have been talking about regulating market conduct, and I think we've talked about how, as serious players in the industry, there is obviously the incentive to do so, but of course recognizing the limitations that are there. And of course, one thing that's mentioned is the jurisdictional arbitrage in this space. That would be a key difference compared to TradFi. What So apart from market conduct, I think another aspect about regulations that perhaps we might start to see more of, and again, I think which the industry would want to see more of as well, is perhaps regulations with regard to user protection. So, in the TradFi space at least, some aspects of user protection would be things like having a custodian, a custody. And I think in this ecosystem, there's increasing awareness about that as well. Things like obviously security, everything from your keys, your multi keys, and so on, to this whole thing about preventing fraud and theft, right? So perhaps Collin, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think in this space, security is something that every player here takes very seriously, and I think we see that there are certain standards where regulators have already put in place requiring us to meet them, right? So I think at an international level, some people are required to meet the ISO standards. In Singapore, more specifically, I think we are required to meet the standards administered by the Technological Risk Management Guidelines, the MAS, requires license or exempt players to meet. So these are basic checks and balances in place for us to adhere to. But I think like what all the other panelists have said, right, maybe the industry is a little bit different, right? So in terms of managing the technological risk in our space, maybe something a little bit more tailored needs to be designed for us. But as it is, I think we have a basic framework on which to work from, and the industry is still so nascent. So going down the road, I think we foresee regulatory changes are going to be more tailored and more refined to meet the practical difficulties that some of the players like us experience in enforcing maybe the existing traditional frameworks. Yeah.
Thanks, Collin. Andy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would certainly echo what Collin said. I think one of the challenges within the DeFi space is, in order for this industry to survive, it's going to have to be built on trust. And there is not going to be the ability to rely on regulatory authorities to build that trust. It's just not the nature of the product. And so because of the extremely low barriers to entry, also because of the hype involved that could entice unsophisticated investors to throw their money at projects that promise a huge return when in fact it's going to be a rug pull or some other fraudulent kind of scheme. It's kind of up to us in the industry to try to police those as best you can. And obviously there is always going to be an opportunity for bad actors to exploit any kind of financial product for their own gain. That's as old as time itself. But I think what you're starting to see is reputable exchanges and other blockchain companies establishing and setting the bar for what they think the standards ought to be, whether it's security, whether it's listing conditions on what tokens they're going to accept on their exchange, whether it's how frequently or large amounts they're going to allow to move on and off of that exchange. All these different indicia of bad behavior that is going to be up to us to control. And if we don't, it's going to be our own fault because the public is going to lose trust in the industry. And once that happens, it is almost impossible to recover from.
Thanks, Andy. Any thoughts, Shaun?
Yeah, I think this issue is particularly meaningful for me, right? Coming from ChainUp, right? Because we are a blockchain technology vendor, right? So what we really do is we are behind the software, behind the technology that empowers a lot of blockchain businesses, empowers a lot of crypto exchanges, right? With our exchange trading software, our technical infrastructure, right? So cybersecurity is something that right from the start has been very, very important to ChainUp. And I think our development team in particular, right? We have a very large development team, right? And we're always trying to stay ahead of the game. And I think what we all realize now is that the cyber criminals in crypto are actually really sophisticated, you know, and I think first of all, it's also the nature of the industry, the nature of how everything is designed, right? It's very easy to stay anonymous if you know how to, right? And we have seen so many cases of this, right, over the years. I think that things are improving slowly, right? If you look at, I mean, if you compare to the kind of scams and scandals that we had, you know, years ago, right? The industry is moving in the correct direction, but it is a challenge, right? And it will continue to be a challenge, right? And I think, you know, from a technology vendor perspective, right? It's always difficult, you know, when you're working with this as your default, your starting point, right? Where there are so many potential loopholes, right? So many potential areas where, you know, a particularly, I would say maybe disingenuous person would be able to exploit, right? It's always a challenge, and I think that's why, you know, when it comes to end user protection, consumer protection, right? I think the education has to be there, right? I think that's the starting point, right? I think it's not even about the regulation. I think that users need to know for themselves what they're getting into, right? And to know how to protect themselves accordingly, right? Of course, the technology experts will also be there to help them, right? But there's only so much technology you can do. I think a lot of it comes down to common sense as well, right? Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Shaun. Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that, you know, we talk about, Andy mentioned the need to build trust, right? And actually, I find it peculiar because, you know, in a sense, blockchain and the protocols and so on was meant to be a trustless system. But people don't realize that, well, the chain itself, the ledger, may be a trustless system for transactions and you know, your recording your hash and so on. It's really trust is needed, right, in the interfaces with the chain itself. And I think that's where I think there's actually a big difference between the centralized exchanges and other centralized institutions on one hand, and on the other hand, the decentralized ones. Because anecdotally, and from what we have seen so far, it seems like the centralized institutions are the ones who are incentivized to build trust and do want to comply, and in fact, will be bound to comply. And I give an example. I mean, you may or may not know in Singapore, we have had two recent court cases and orders that were made, one with respect to NFT, and the other with respect to some crypto assets, right? And essentially injunctions, court orders prohibiting further transfers of some of these digital assets were ordered, as well as a disclosure order. Now what's interesting is that it was the centralized exchange that actually complied with a disclosure order that facilitated the claimant to be able to obtain the necessary information to then pursue, you know, the alleged potential wrongdoers. And then for the other case, OpenSea then suspended the trading with regard to the NFT in question. Again, then we see this is only possible because centralized institutions want to comply and want to build trust, and they want to ensure that, you know, there's user protection and safety in a sense of security for users. And I think that's also where the tech aspects come in, but also the need for education, as Shaun said. I think another interesting theme that comes up with regard to regulations is the emergence of central bank digital currency, CBDCs. So I think one big question would be, as we see more of this being proliferated, how will this affect the ecosystem and the regulation of this ecosystem? Andy, perhaps you want to speak to that?
Sure. So I do think that this topic gets a lot of attention, and I think it's based on an incorrect presumption that CBDCs are going to spell the end of private cryptocurrencies. I think nothing could be further from the truth. They're two completely separate areas, really. A CBDC is effectively just the digitization of fiat. It doesn't remove the central bank's authority to control monetary policy. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to, print more money. What it does is to help remove some of the massive inefficiencies that are associated with printing fiat. It's really expensive, hard to put into and take out of circulation, relatively easy to counterfeit, very easy to transport across borders and do so surreptitiously. Blockchain technology effectively removes almost all of those concerns. But I think what we're also seeing is that central banks are discovering the challenges of doing this properly, doing it in a way that maintains security, that protects data privacy, that doesn't expose the CBDC to fraud and other kind of market misconducts. But I think the upside to that is not only are most of these being built on private blockchain technology, the Ethereum chain primarily, but those challenges are now going to have a significant amount of government investment and support to help solve. And there will be, I think, significant cross-pollination between the private sector and the public sector on developing those solutions and putting them out there. And I think the industry as a whole stands to benefit from that.
Thanks, Andy. Any thoughts from the other panelists?
I think just a quick observation from me. I think CBDCs are very interesting, right? Obviously, it's very natural for governments, financial regulators to get interested in these things as well, right? I think when it does get introduced, when it does become more popular, I think what would be really interesting would be to see how this interacts with the current stablecoin ecosystem that we have, right? Because essentially, I mean, why would you need stablecoins if you're going to have central bank digital currencies, right? So I think that's just a very interesting observation from me, right? Just as a legal practitioner in this industry, but I can't say that I'm an expert on CBDCs or stablecoins. Yeah.
Thanks, Collin.
Yeah. So I think how I look at CBDCs, I think like what Andy had said, I agree that CBDCs and cryptocurrencies in general, or other utility tokens, they have different purposes. So CBDCs in itself, I think, if you look at regulators all around the world, central banks all around the world, they recognize that we're entering a new age of money, right? So CBDCs could be a solution, a technological solution to eliminate some of these inefficiencies in the market. But I think we're moving in the right direction because they recognize at the onset that, implementing CBDC is just a tool, but every economy has different inefficiencies. And so the approach to take is really to look at how you can implement CBDCs, that technology, in a way that actually benefits or fits your economy. So just take, for example, maybe in an economy where there's a huge unbanked population, CBDCs at a retail level may be something that's desirable, right? Because then if, let's say, take COVID, for example. COVID is when, we wanted to stimulate the economy. We wanted to put purchasing powers into the hands of the people. If we had a CBDC token available in that industry, the central bank could easily send, say, $100 to each of the unbanked population, and that could be a more efficient way of stimulating monetary policy in those unbanked jurisdictions. So I think there are definitely, advantages to this technology, but there are also disadvantages, right? Because traditionally, banks are the ones that control money supply. When they do loans, that's when money is created. And so I think there is a fine balance between when the central bank should be using that technology to reach out to the unbanked population, as well as managing the commercial aspects of taking that traditional bread and butter business away from the banks. Because without that, where is the bank's next source of revenue going to be? So there are important questions to be asked, and this boils down to the fact that every economy is different. The use of CBDC is merely a tool. You need to look at how best to implement that tool. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think thanks for all that illumination. I think it's very helpful to be able to clarify that, yeah, essentially CBDCs and crypto are really two kettles of fish, right? And in a sense, CBDCs are really more about the sort of the technological back end to digital representations of current fiat currency. And in a sense, given that it's actually not much of a interface between that and cryptocurrency currently. But one thing that is raised is sovereign control over monetary policy. I think that's definitely a concern of most central banks, regulators, governments. And that brings to mind Facebook Meta's Libra project. When it was first proposed, it came up with a bang. And I think quite quickly, a lot of central banks and regulators very quickly spoke up against it. And now, as far as I know at least, it seems like the project has been pretty much halted. None, I think, of the current cryptocurrencies are even close to that. But for the fact that, well, I mean, Facebook as a platform is essentially probably as big as one of the largest nations in the world. And if they were to use a coin like that, they would become effectively the central bank of the world, right? And that is the concern. But do you guys think that there's any such concern with regard to crypto apart from this project?
I mean, I think the silence is we don't know. I think it's early days. It would have been interesting. I mean, it will be interesting 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road if Meta doesn't come up with the same, or maybe there'll be a bigger platform out there. Maybe the metaverse will have taken over and will be in a universe we don't even recognize right now. But I think for the time being, I think most regulators and most people in the industry are willing to kind of see how this plays out. I think it's early days. The level of adoption, as much as it increased in the last few years, it's still in our infancy. Where it's going to go in the future, I don't know. I don't know if anyone can predict that. But I don't think that there is a panic that this is somehow going to, upset the world order in a way that maybe the original cypherpunks, had kind of wished it would. It's mainstream now, and I think because of that, it will develop in a mainstream way, and with the consensus of not just the pioneers in the crypto space who maybe had a different vision of what this would really mean, but the broader demographic of society. And so I think it will. We call it a revolution, but if it's a revolution, it'll be a slow rolling one. That's more inclusive, I think, than a takeover.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I see that our time is kind of up, so I'm just going to maybe give each of us a chance to give one final comment. Any final thoughts on this topic, future regulations that you sort of foresee in the space. I'll start, and then I'll invite anyone else to share. I think one concern that critics have raised about blockchain and all that is the environmental impact. And I think in the wider space, there is a move towards ESG regulations, environmental social governance concerns, these things being regulated. And my question, I think, is to just throw it out there is, will this space also be increasingly scrutinized and regulated, with regard to ESG? Any of the panelists have any other final thoughts on this topic?
I think my only final thought is just, as I think everyone in here recognizes, we're in early days, and I think we should expect to see some bumps in the road and some disagreements between the industry and regulators in terms of how this ought to be approached. But if you look at how long it took traditional finance to become regulated in any sort of globally consistent manner, and it's arguable whether it even is, we're way ahead of the curve in comparison, and I think the speed of that will only increase.
Thanks, Andy. Shaun?
Yeah, so very interesting point, Ronald. I think we all knew that last year there was a bit of a crypto exodus out of China, especially for crypto mining operators, right? And I think a lot of these mining operators, they eventually move to jurisdictions, to countries where energy is cheap, right? And I think more importantly, in my personal view, where energy tends to be cleaner, right? Like I know that quite a lot of operators, they move to the US, right, close to, some of them close to the Niagara Falls, right, where they have a huge hydroelectric dam, right? So we're looking at a shift towards, cleaner energy. Of course, there are many different types of crypto mining, right? So there are the super energy intensive types, and then there are the, proof of stake types, right? But what we're seeing, I think at least in, recent developments, I do welcome this shift, I think that as a whole, the industry and regulators and countries are trying to be more responsible about this, right? Okay, fine, you guys need energy to do what you need to do, right? But let's try and do this properly, right? Let's try to minimize our environmental impact, right? And I think we're seeing that now, right? So that's something that I'm very optimistic about.
Thanks, Shaun. Collin, final thoughts?
Yeah, so just a quick one. I think you can see in the industry, we already recognize it. In order for mass adoption to happen, for serious institutional money to come in, funds around the world, ESG team investments are, I think, the thing for the next decade. So the industry has already recognized this. One example, moving to a proof of stake model supposedly would improve the environmental impact that cryptocurrencies have in the world. So I think the industry is definitely going to get there. We're definitely going to, in a way, conform to that. Yeah.
Thanks, Collin. Thanks, panelists. Can I invite us to just give a round of applause to my panelists? Thank you.
Thank you once again, gentlemen. Thank you very much. There you have it, our first panel discussion, Future of Digital Money and Assets, Governance and Law. Let's give them a big round of applause once again. Okay, next we have NFTs. We have Alvin Leong, Bybit NFT Ambassador, to come up and take this session. Let's give a big round of applause once again for Alvin Leong, Bybit NFT Ambassador.
Hi, thanks everyone. So, can I have the slides on the screen? Yeah, thanks everyone. So today I'm just going to talk to you about the Bybit NFT platform. I'm just going to do a quick introduction to the Bybit NFT platform, why you should launch NFTs on the Bybit NFT platform, what are the benefits, and how you can work together with Bybit on NFTs. So, yeah, so we are just going to answer these 4 questions. Who's Bybit? What's the Bybit NFT platform? Why launch NFTs with Bybit? And finally, what are the ways that you can work with Bybit to launch the NFTs? So who's Bybit? I'm sure most of you probably know who Bybit is. But Bybit is the main sponsor for this event. It's one of the leading crypto exchanges in the world today. And Bybit recently launched the Bybit NFT platform. So Bybit is expanding into NFTs as well to engage fans and users in a new way. So Bybit has a global audience of crypto users all over the world. It was established in 2018 and has reached users in over 100 countries in 13 different languages. So it's one of the leading, especially for derivatives, it's one of the leading exchanges today. So what's the Bybit NFT platform? The Bybit NFT platform is a one-stop shop where users can mint, sell, and trade NFTs. So this is, the marketplace enables IP owners, brands, and personalities to launch and sell unique digital items to consumers and fans all over the world. So you can see some samples of the mystery boxes that we've launched previously, as well as some of the individual items. So this is a brief roadmap of the Bybit NFT platform. It was just launched in January this year. And over the last few months, the Bybit NFT platform has enabled withdrawals on Ethereum chain as well, so you can withdraw it to your Ethereum wallet. There's customized royalty features, just like on OpenSea. You can set your the percentage of royalty that you want. And finally, just recently, we are just building out the NFT branding and social marketing platform for the NFTs, as well as auction NFTs and free mints. So why should you create NFTs? Like, I'm sure a lot of you out here have already minted and sold NFTs yourself. But for the brands, yeah, these are different benefits. You can have an extra income source, whether it's through the initial mint or even like the ongoing sales. Recently, there's been a trend for free mints with high quality art, which just they make more money from the resales than from the initial mint because it's a free mint. You can monetize existing IP or other virtual assets. And there's this long tail income where you can benefit the creators themselves, the artists and developers. So additionally, NFTs provide a new marketing channel. It's a new way to engage your fans and a new way to build brand loyalty. So like, of course, like all of you have seen Yuga Labs, what they're doing. Even with NFTs like Azuki, despite the FUD, they still like maintain the floor price more or less. So this is an NFT success story on Bybit NFT platform. Snoop Dogg, we launched this collection in partnership with Snoop Dogg, some of his digital art. It reached over 1 million in sales volume. And as well as like this Wong Kar-wai's film, this NFT reached like $500,000. So why launch NFTs with Bybit? Like if you can use some of these other platforms, why would you want to use Bybit instead? Well, we have actually a few reasons to answer why. So number one, marketing resources. Bybit is one of the largest crypto exchanges out there. We have a lot of marketing resources across the world. Millions of users registered, 10 billion in daily trading volume. All of this is, of course, on the spot and derivative side of trading, but we can tap on that same audience for your NFT sales. Yeah, almost 1 million followers on Twitter, across Telegram, Discord as well. And we have this huge network of influencers and KOLs all over the world, across YouTube, Twitter, Telegram, Line, and more, with a combined reach of millions. So all these people who currently put their affiliate links for Bybit, spot exchange or futures exchange, we can tap on all these resources to help you market your NFTs. So PR and media as well. So we have deep relationships with all these different crypto media publishers, Cointelegraph, CoinDesk, Decrypt, Forecast News, Bloomberg, Business Insider, Forbes, and more. And finally, like we have, these are some of our existing partnerships and sponsorships. Oracle, Red Bull, we are the official partner to launch NFTs, as well as like major sports and esports organizations from esports, football, even boxing. So yeah, if NFTs are the future, then the future is here. So the final part of this introduction will be on how the exact ways that you can launch your NFTs on Bybit. So okay, there are three main types of NFT launches on Bybit. So number one, limited edition sales. These are the typical NFTs that you see, let's say on OpenSea, you list a single item. Let's say we call it Kong's 1110 or something like that. It's a fixed item with a fixed price and limited numbers. The second one, auctions, which we recently are launching. These are auctions like you can see on eBay or other auction sites where you can bid out the price. Limited edition, limited time sales, and finally mystery boxes. So these are things like NBA Top Shots or other kinds of like randomized NFTs that you can get from a mystery box. So Bybit will obtain the rights to use the content provided by the partners to launch on the platform. The partner is also entitled to 2 AMA campaigns within the first week of launch. So on the Bybit Telegram group and on Twitter. So of course the partner will do their best to also promote on their own platforms, but of course we'll try to do our side as well. So these are some of the marketing resources available on Bybit. We'll create a customized landing page for you, a customized blog, individual NFT collections, promotion by email across our email list. We are promoting it on the Bybit app. So whether on the mobile app or on the PC, we can create banners for NFT campaign. And outside of Bybit, we can use Twitter, social media across Twitter, Telegram, Discord, and more. And of course, all of our existing KOL and influencer partnerships as well. And we, like as mentioned earlier, the AMA and Twitter Spaces. So yeah, that's the end of my speech. If you're interested in partnering with Bybit to launch your NFTs, like you can go ahead and scan the QR codes and or note down the emails. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, Alvin, Leong. Thank you. There we are, ladies and gentlemen. That's about the topic of NFTs. Let's give a big round of applause once again to Alvin Leong, everyone. From Bybit, NFT Ambassador. Okay, so next would be the fireside chat session regarding securing the future of blockchain data in the data cloud. So I'd like to welcome our moderator, Zennon and Kapron. Give us a few minutes, maybe in 2 minutes. Let us look for our moderator, see if he's around, and invite him on. Then we'll start off with our, once again, fireside chat session, securing the future of blockchain data in the data cloud. Okay. So let's start with our next session, which is the fireside chat session. It's called Securing the Future of Blockchain Data in the Data Cloud. I'd like to welcome our moderator, Zennon Kapron, Director of Kapronasia, and our speaker, Jack O'Connor, Sales Director of ASEAN at Snowflake. Let's give them a big round of applause. Snowflake. Sorry.
Great. Yes, thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for coming for this fireside chat. I think, I mean, it's great to see so many people out in a physical event again. I mean, this is the first one that I've done for a while. I don't know about you, Jack, but looking forward to the conference season this year. Jack, maybe to start off, I mean, let's just set the stage with Snowflake. I mean, what do you guys do? Why are you here today? Tell us a little bit more about the business and what it means for Web3, crypto, blockchain.
Certainly. Can you guys hear me? No? Hello? Hello? Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, this is the first in-person event that I've done thus far this year. But to start, yes, Snowflake, we are essentially a data cloud. We are one platform for all your workloads. And essentially what we're doing within the crypto and Web3 space is this industry sits on top of an incredibly rich asset, and that's data. And we are a big data company, and we help companies, whether that be exchanges, marketplaces, or data applications, really aggregate, source, and deliver this data out to users. So at a high level, that's what we do. And yeah, we've been in the space for over 10 years now. And especially out here in South Asia, the business is growing quite rapidly, and especially in Web3.
So, I mean, to make that a little bit more practical, could you talk us through a case study within the crypto or the blockchain space? Kind of explain, you know, what the problem statement was, what Snowflake was able to do, and what the benefits were for the client.
Certainly. So I had the fortunate benefit of working with a company out in the States called FlipSide Crypto. They work with a number of blockchains specifically, and what they do is they source this data for the protocols, and they deliver it out to over 12,000 data analysts and scientists so that they can answer questions on on-chain activity. And then what FlipSide does is they then tell these protocols, hey, this is how you can invest more here, you can divest less here, because essentially this will drive community engagement and network activity within your platform. And we've also worked with another company out here in Singapore. They're called Solana FM. They pretty much are using our data marketplace to distribute and democratize their data, this Solana on-chain data, to financial institutions in New York and London. And the Snowflake Data Cloud, we are a multi-region, multi-cloud platform. So essentially, you suddenly have all these distribution channels. So this company in particular can now generate more revenue streams and do it in a much faster time to market than if you would have to build it yourself.
Yeah, I could imagine, I mean, the complexity of trying to build a product like that, being able to aggregate all of those different data sources, all of those different methodologies for analyzing the data, that must be, I mean, kind of the value proposition that Snowflake brings to these companies, right?
Certainly, yeah. And blockchain data, as you all likely know, is not as, it's messy. For a lot of these protocols, data is not necessarily important, or it's not the backbone of their business. So for other folks who are looking to invest in this and use it as a financial product, you're missing certain business logic. And a lot of the companies that we work with, they are in the space, in the data space, and they add their secret sauce onto this on-chain data and then can give it out, can analyze it in certain ways that deliver value to every type of business who's interested.
Yeah, I mean, what typically, I mean, when Snowflake goes in to work with a client, what would they have been doing previously? You know, what is their status quo that you're helping to replace, or?
So most are digitally native. They're on the cloud, and either, well, I hope there's not a fire, but sometimes there is a fire because of just the massive amount of data and the velocity of it that comes in. And yeah, like I said, they're usually on the cloud. They're either on AWS, Azure, or GCP. And really, we simply try to understand, hey, what's your current state? What are you trying to achieve in the future? And then pretty much putting all the pieces in place, mapping everything out, understanding how we can feed that data in a secure and seamless fashion, and then understanding how they're consuming it, what they're doing with it, so that we can really accelerate their time to market.
Can you talk, I mean, that security aspect is really interesting, and I think when you, I mean, within this session and many of the other sessions we're talking about, you know, bridging DeFi and traditional Fi. What are the considerations around that, and how can Snowflake help to address some of those security concerns and the integrity of the data to ensure that we're not, you know, we're just querying rather than destroying or manipulating? How does the platform accomplish that?
Great question. So with being only one platform for all your data needs and requirements, we have a very strong case for data governance and security, because you don't have silos, you don't have data moving from A to B for analysis or consumption. It just sits in one place. So we work with a large exchange out in the US who uses us for security measures, because if there's a breach, let's hope not, they can suddenly spin up the largest compute resource and look at all of this data within minutes or seconds to identify the breach, make sure it's squashed in a much more rapid fashion. And with having, and another point is, when you have different data silos, perhaps someone forgets to twist a knob and make sure a certain key is in place, or someone just leaves the door open pretty much. Whereas with Snowflake, we obfuscate that, we take care of that for you, all of that security and management aspect out of that. And many of our customers have benefited greatly, and have, especially in financial services. We work with Capital One. When they had their data breach, we were the platform to quickly identify where that anomaly came from. And it was actually in one of those silos that wasn't under the Snowflake platform.
Thankfully, there are no data breaches in the crypto space, so I think we're safe
Certainly
from that
not.
perspective. Why would I use Snowflake as opposed to an AWS? Or because these guys, Azure, AWS, Google, they all have tools
Yes.
for data analytics as well. Why wouldn't I just use those?
Well, they all have phenomenal products. They wouldn't be here if they weren't delivering value to their customers. Now, the way Snowflake is different is, rather than having a laundry list of products to choose from, it's just one. We are in the business of making things easy and making it just work. And we are investing heavily in adding more and more use cases and workloads to the platform. We have our summit in 2 weeks, which will be the largest product announcement that we have in the last 4 years, because we just want to be that single source for all your data requirements. And furthermore, we're on all 3 clouds. So with your larger financial institutions, your exchanges, they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. They want to mitigate risks. If one cloud goes down, if a region goes down, you need to have a backup plan.
Redundancy. Yeah.
And that is one use case where we can automatically fail over into another region, into another cloud, without the lights turning off.
Got it. To transition a little bit into like what's happening in the space now, I mean, when you look at data and data analytics within the crypto Web3 space, what excites you? What are some of the trends that you're seeing? Not specific, we'll get to the region in a second, but just kind of globally, what are some of the trends around data and data analytics within the space that excite you, and what are the unique ways that people are using these tools to capture more value?
I mean, there's two that come to mind. It's one, understanding who is interacting with this, with blockchain. So we work with a prominent marketplace, NFT marketplace in the States as well, and they understand user behavior, the trends, like even Twitter trends, what's the latest and greatest NFT project, and they make sure that their homepage has the stuff that sticks and engages users so that they keep coming back and purchasing and using their platform to beat out the competition. Because ultimately, this space is highly competitive, and you don't have time to slip. Some say a quarter in crypto is 10 years on the outside, and companies need to better understand their users so that they can succeed ultimately. And then when we talk about traditional financial services, everyone wants in. We're hearing more and more about the traditional players who are done sitting on the sidelines, and they are incredibly hungry for data on these successful blockchains, and they want to get in on it and analyze historical trends within it for investment decisions. So one of our key initiatives within the financial services data cloud, as we call it, is onboarding as many of these data providers onto our marketplace so that these large institutions can do whatever analysis they want. They don't need to source it themselves because many times the data isn't fully accurate or has the business logic that they need, and it can be delivered in seamless, secure, fresh fashion, whereas it would take days to comb through a Solana data set. I think it's like 1.7 petabytes, and it grows 4x every year. So yeah, it's a big problem, but we're excited because there's just so much innovation in this space.
This is the downside of a faster blockchain is the speed of data also increases in that as well. I mean, most organizations that you work with already have some kind of data analytics in place, whether that's a 10-line Python script or something much more sophisticated. If you were to think about what is the one thing that you see organizations not doing around data analytics that they should be doing? What is table stakes in data analytics right now in the blockchain space? What is something that they should be doing today that you just don't see a lot of organizations doing?
I don't see a lot of simplicity. People love to make things sometimes more complicated than they need to be, and that can just slow things down, decelerate your ability to release new products, and it just keeps you in this one box, and you need to open that up. Like, if you have all these developers, it's a shame when you just keep them within one area, and then when they want to do something else, it's like, well, it's going to take some time to do that. You're wait in line kind of thing. Companies don't have that time, and especially during this market, it's time to sharpen your pencils and really build a strong foundation. And in my mind, that means simplifying things and really understanding what are users looking for? How can we deliver that now so that when the market does come back around, we are the strongest player in the space?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, when you look at what's happening, what 2022 is looking like is a much more tight environment for VC funding. And whereas, we may have been able to afford many developers to play around with things, now we need to focus on what matters and pull up our britches and get things moving. Talking about now more regionally, looking at ASEAN, I mean, we're sitting here in Singapore, which it may or may not be the crypto headquarters of Asia. Remains to be seen over the next few months, but yeah, knock on wood wherever there is some. What are you seeing within the region? What kind of excites you about the region, and how does what's happening here differ from the data perspective that you're seeing in other jurisdictions around the world?
It's the innovation. I mean, from gaming to NFTs, to all the exchanges that are here today. It's amazing to see. I think the diversity of use cases for crypto are much more prevalent here than anywhere else in the world. So that means the applications are just that much more interesting. And to your point on kind of the VC funding realm, yeah, last year I think there was over $1 billion in VC money that was put into this space, specifically in ASEAN, and that may not be the case moving forward. So you may not have as many hands on deck to produce these things or to manage these resources, these data platforms, and that's where a lot of our customers also see value, is kind of minimizing the management aspect, having to build it yourself, and just rather have the data and build whatever products that are going to engage your users the most.
Yeah, I love that idea, is simplifying. I think that could summarize a lot of our conversation, is the simplification, both in terms of the way that we access data and use analytics, as well as the way that organizations need to look at things. We have a couple minutes left. Just to wrap up, I mean, when we come back for Blockchain Fest 2023, what is going to be the one thing that surprises us, or what do you think is going to be different that next year than as compared to this year?
Well, I certainly hope the price of Bitcoin is higher, but in terms of next year, yeah, I'm really looking to see there'll probably be some consolidation in the market, but I'm excited to see who succeeds and why, because clearly whatever they've done has stood the test of time and continues to deliver value to customers. I'm excited to see some of these exchanges and how they grow. I know Bybit is growing rapidly and is making big waves in the space. So really looking forward to seeing who is able to stick it out and be successful.
And what do you think is going to be the one surprising thing that nobody out here could predict about what's going to happen in the next year? What's your moonshot for the next year, whether positive or negative?
Moonshot. Ooh, that's a good question. I'm very confident things will get back to the levels that we saw previously, because the amount of people who and intellectual minds that are working on these projects is just astounding. And I think I read something like 0.1% of all the developers in the world are working on crypto projects. So that just tells me that we still have so much intellectual capital that can still be put into these, can be put into this industry. So I can't even predict what we'll see in a year or a few years from now, because I really think we're at truly the start, and we'll have so much more intellect building wonderful products.
Yeah, it's amazing how much is coming into the space. I'm in a couple of chat groups, and it's rare that a day goes by without a banker coming into the group and saying, I want to get in crypto. So maybe I'll give him your details and work for Snowflake. Jack, thanks so much. It was great to chat through, I mean, both
Thank you,
what you're
Zennon.
seeing, what Snowflake is offering, and what you see for the region. Thanks for your time today. If anybody has any questions, please do reach out to Jack. I'm sure he'll be around for the rest of the day. And thanks again. Let's give Jack a round of applause, please.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Zennon.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. There you have it, the fireside chat session, securing the future of blockchain data in the data cloud from Zennon Kapron and Jack O'Connor. Moving on, next is the importance of private key security for institution adopting crypto. Let's welcome Lior Lamesh, GK8 CEO and co-founder.
Hi everyone. A few years ago, I was working in cybersecurity for the government, and I thought that that would be my future. And then something happened. I became interested in cryptocurrencies, and I thought I would be secured. So I bought one of the most secure cold wallets in the market, a device that holds billions of dollars all around the world. It was sold 1 million times in 2017, and I hacked it easily. And that was the beginning of our journey. My name is Lior Lamesh, and I'm co-founder and CEO at GK8. My background is cybersecurity, the level of national security. I used to work for the Israeli Prime Minister's office. I was part of an elite team that protected the strategic assets of the country from cybersecurity attacks. At GK8, we created the first true cold vault that can create, sign, and send blockchain transactions without being connected to the internet. We're pairing this technology along with MPC for automated transactions. We're working today with the very large institutions that managing more than $50 million in digital assets. It includes banks, exchanges, custodians, hedge funds. They're using our self-custody solution to offer services such as custody, staking, DeFi, tokenization, NFT custody, and more. We're working with large clients such as Celsius, eToro, Tether Foundation, and more. Last year, we've been acquired by Celsius Network, but we remain a fully independent company, continue serving our clients, and expand our clients' portfolio. So today I'm going to talk with you about the importance of private key security for institutional adopting crypto. Now, let's see what's going on. Since the beginning, hacking events in cryptocurrencies are reported weekly, and a large amount of money is stolen every time. Large institutions have been hacked. CoinCheck, $547 million. Binance, $40 million. Qcon, $245 million. Bitmart, $196 million. These are very large institutions, right? And if they can protect themselves, who can? And what will happen when the world's largest bank will join the game? And I know for sure that they are right now as we speak. So clearly, in the world of institutional crypto, something is wrong. Let's take a look on a few numbers. When we started our journey in 2018, it was $1 billion that was stolen from institutional that adopted crypto. It was mainly crypto exchanges. In 2019, it was $4.6 billion. In 2020, it's doubled to almost $8 billion. And in 2021, it's doubled again. So what's the problem? Basically, all defenses against modern weapon. A metal shield is effective against a sword, but useless against a machine gun. Hackers are simply ahead of our institutions. But wait, isn't blockchain secure? So inherently, blockchain is very secure, right? It's a decentralized data structure where there are hundreds of thousands of nodes that sharing the same information with a consensus algorithm between them. The majority decides what the truth is. So for hacker, in order to compromise the blockchain, we will have to compromise hundreds of thousands of nodes, and this mission is nearly impossible. Now, blockchain is irreversible protocol, right? Immutable protocol. So once a transaction is inserted to the blockchain, there is no way back. But the Achilles heel of the blockchain is the private key. Private key is like the traditional check signature. If someone steals your signature, he can make a transaction on your behalf and steal your money. And once he did it, there is no way back, the money is gone, and there is no way to receive the money back. Now, the private key basically used for any kind of communication with the blockchain, from the basic money movement from A to B, in order to interact with the smart contracts, including DeFi protocols, in order to participate in proof of stake and earn, and in order to make tokenization and management of tokenization of assets. And what is a wallet? Wallet is a device that's holding and managing this private key. Today, there are two core types of wallets. One is cold wallet and one is hot. Cold wallet is like a vault. It's very secure, but cannot be used for automated transactions. And hot wallet is like ATM. It's available and can be used for automated transactions, but exposed to risks. What I'm going to do now is to explain to you how every hot wallet and cold wallet can be hacked. But first, I want to explain about a very important principle of how hackers think. So hacking is a business, right? How much hacker will invest in order to compromise into exchange? It depends how much it can get. It's about ROI, and hackers will invest millions to steal billions, and this is a very important principle that we should keep in mind, because that's exactly how hackers think. So let's start with the hot wallet. The basic assumption, based on my experience, is that $1 million should be enough in average for hacker to invest in order to compromise one public internet-connected computer. That's why in order to compromise a standard hot wallet, all of what hacker will have to do is to invest $1 million in order to compromise this computer that holds the key. That's why people invented a more advanced hot wallet that based on either multisig or MPC. What basically multisig and MPC is? Multisig means that instead of one private key that's involved in the signature process, there are 2 or 3 keys that are involved in the signature process. And in MPC, it's a single key that's spread into 2 or 3 different parts. Each of these parts of the keys are located in different internet-connected computer. So what hacker will have to do in order to compromise multisig or MPC is basically just invest $2 or $3 million in order to, again, potentially steal billions. This is also goes for MPC. And it's very important to talk about it because today people see MPC as the gold standard in the market, while it's not enough. MPC is very secure, but is not secure enough for institutions that want to manage tens or hundreds or billions of dollars, not by itself. We can see an example that happened in Liquid, one of the biggest Japanese crypto exchanges last year. They have been hacked for $90 million when they used MPC to protect their assets. And what happened next was that they decided to move their assets from their MPC wallet to their cold wallet. But is cold wallet secure enough? Cold wallets are absolutely safe until they are not. What do I mean by that? How can something that is offline be hacked? So let's take a look on the anatomy of a crypto transaction. In order to make a crypto transaction, in addition to the standard data of the addressee and the amount of money that's going to be sent, there is additional data, the blockchain data. In order to make a valid blockchain transaction, you always need to take the most updated data from the blockchain in order to have all of the data that you need in order to sign on that and send a valid blockchain transaction. So every time when you want to make a transaction, you need to request for this data, then you receive it as some kind of raw input from the internet, and only then you have all of the information you need in order to sign on the transaction and send it to the blockchain. Now, when you receive this raw input, it can potentially include malicious code because you just receive raw input from the public internet. This malicious code, for example, can change the addressee from the address of Bob in this example to the address of the hacker and make you send a transaction to a wrong addressee, and that's how money can be stolen. And the instance when you use bidirectional connectivity with the public internet, this is exactly where cold becomes hot. So today there are a few types of cold wallets, either B2C cold wallets that using a micro USB cable in order to receive this input from the internet, some more enterprise-oriented solutions that using HSM, which is also connected to the internet with the Ethernet cable, LAN cable, and some so air-gapped machines that are as well not really cold. They also receive this input with a thumb drive, SD card, QR code and camera, and again, the instance when you receive input from internet-connected computer to another computer that's supposed to be air-gapped is not air-gapped anymore. So when you use bidirectional connectivity with the public internet, the cold becomes hot, and that's why there is no real cold wallet today in the market. Now, after we understand how we can hack any hot and cold wallets, let's talk about why it's important to protect private keys when it also comes to DeFi. So what is DeFi? Basically, DeFi is a smart contract that enables on-chain trading between multiple of layer 2 protocols, right? And admin key is the key that's used in order to sign on this smart contract and deploy it to the blockchain. But the problem is that today, the managers of these DeFi projects, they want to keep control on their DeFi protocol post-deployment. And that's why they keep to themselves some superpowers. These superpowers are some functionalities that are accessed only by this key, and no one else can access them. It means that there is a single point of failure in these smart contracts and DeFi protocols that if a hacker possesses, he can make a transaction on behalf of the DeFi owner and access to transactions and money that no one else should access. And this is basically the users of the DeFi money. So is DeFi really decentralized? It depends on the code. If there are functionalities with the spatial permissions to access from the admin key, then it's not really decentralized. Let's see a few examples. So the first example is very interesting. It was actually an Israeli project back in 2018. $23.5 million was hacked because somebody possessed a Bancor, which is one of the first decentralized exchanges that I would say one of the first DeFi protocols that before even the DeFi term was exist. Somebody hacked their admin key, he stole this money, and what happened then, it was even worse. Bancor managers decided to use their admin key in order to freeze these assets. And this is exactly what's decentralized, why it's not really decentralized, because if somebody, by using single private key, can control the assets of the users of the protocol or freeze the assets of the users of the protocol, it's not really decentralized. Let's take a look at another example. Just a year ago, the project EasyFi, which is a fork of a compound on a Polygon network, also been hacked. What happened there is that a hacker possessed the admin key of this protocol. It was the founder and CEO admin key. What he did then, he drained the pool to another DeFi protocols. It was Uniswap and 1inch, and literally crashed this project. And if you're interested, the founder and CEO managed this admin key using a multi-sig between hot wallet, if I'm not wrong, it was MetaMask, along with the cold wallet, which, as we just mentioned, is not really cold. So hackers are targeting centralization. And that's why DeFi projects should make sure that they don't keep for them some superpowers to control the DeFi and the smart contracts pending deployment, because then it's not really decentralized. Now let's talk about staking. In fact, when you do staking, you participate in the proof of stake protocol. You need to use the private key in order to deposit the assets to the protocol, to lock them. Then when you want to go out, you want to withdraw them. And while the money is locked, you need to participate in the validation process. All of these three processes requires the private key to sign on every communication with the blockchain. So in fact, if hacker is possessing the staking key, he can just withdraw the assets from the protocol at any point and steal the money, or he can cause to the participate in the proof of stake to make a fake attestation of the validation process of the staking, and then he can just lose money. Another use case is in CBDC. CBDC is evolving pretty slow, but it will be there in this decade. And CBDC eventually is just like another smart contract where you make tokenization of the local currency, right? Now, the central bank that want to control their local currency and their local token, they need to be able to make two very sensitive operations, to mint and to burn, to print new money and to make revocation. If a hacker will be able to possess their private key while they are making these two very sensitive operations, they will be able either to print to themselves a lot of money or just delete the money of everyone, and basically will be able to destroy the whole economy in once. So in CBDC, it's extremely sensitive, and the private key should be secure as good as possible. So if this is the case, what's the solution? How can this problem be solved? Or in other words, what are we do different? So at GK8, we have a patent to generate this blockchain data that any other solution need to take from the internet by ourselves, internally. We don't need to take it from the internet. So we are using outbound unidirectional communication only to send already signed transaction. So we never receive input, and since we never receive input, there is no any potential attack vector. And if there is no any attack vector, we are literally not exposed to any cyber hacks from cybersecurity attacks. What we do is we have a unique risk-based approach where the majority of the assets are controlled and managed in the cold vault that, again, cannot be hacked, and we are pairing it with MPC to manage only small amount of money. And that's how we change the equation for hackers, right? Because in the cold vault, it's not about ROI anymore, because it's impossible to compromise the cold vault, while the MPC manage only small amount of money, and it will not be beneficial for hacker even try to invest a few millions to steal this money, because it's probably less than he even invested. And while you can use these vaults, you can use it for the most basic operations of make money movement from A to B and to manage the assets as part of custody. You can have communication with smart contract while you are managing the admin key from completely offline device, while you can still communicate with the blockchain without exposing your private key to cyber risk. And you can make cold staking, means the staking keys will always remain in the cold vault, while the validation keys, in order to make the correctness attestation with the block, will be done from the MPC, but the money will always be saved in the cold vault. And as well as in CBDC, the minting and burning capabilities can take place from the cold vault, and that's how no one will be able to print money or delete the money of everyone. So thank you so much for your attention. The blockchain has an inherent weakness. It has to go online at some point, and this is the gap that we feel. Feel free to reach out to me by email if you have any questions. Thank you so much again for your attention. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you around. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. Leo Lamesh, with the interesting topic on the importance of private key security for institutions adopting crypto. Next topic would be the ESG characteristic of smart contract platforms. We'd like to welcome Daniel Liebau on stage, Modular Asset Management Chief Investment Officer of Modular and BlockChain Fund. Let's get up once again for Daniel Liebau, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. Finally, we are back face-to-face meetings, right? I'm quite happy about that myself, actually. Maybe I introduce myself briefly. My name is Daniel. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of the Modular BlockChain Fund. Modular Asset Management is a local fund management firm. And I'm also active researcher and teacher in the field of blockchain. So I run a class on blockchain and also on DeFi at Singapore Management University. But today, I want to talk to you about a very important topic that has been a little bit overlooked in the past, and that is really how to think about sustainability characteristics of blockchain platforms and smart contract platforms more specifically. So there are four things that I want to talk about. First, I want to introduce two very important trends in investments. Second, I want to define for you what a smart contract platform is. Many of you already know what that is. And then I have some ideas on how to go about assessing the sustainability characteristics of these platforms. And then I'll say it all again so that you don't forget anything, and we wrap up, okay? I know there is time for lunch soon, so I won't keep you longer than planned for. Now, here are the key points of my presentation, just to sum it up for you in the beginning, and I'll do that again when we wrap up. A smart contract platform you can think of as an operating system that enables two peers to engage in peer-to-peer commerce. Okay? So what's very important to note is that they're not companies. They're not incorporated as firms in a legal sense. Often they're foundations. These smart contract platforms are very important. They make up about $384 billion worth of market capitalization. That's probably around 50% of the entire cryptocurrency market if you take Bitcoin away. What we pose is that only the sustainable platforms, and if you think about the word sustainable, right, what it means is actually is something that is going to be there for a long time. Only the sustainable ones will eventually be adopted both by entrepreneurs but also by large corporations. So understanding how we can assess these platforms and these characteristics of the platforms is very, very important if you're an investor, because it enables you to pick the winners. So let me just move on real quick to the two trends that I mentioned before. So the first one is obviously sustainable investing. And I'm showing you here a slide on fund flows into sustainability type funds. And this is only until the end of 2020, but we already know that this number keeps growing. But is ESG not only a scam? Many people in the crypto community argue like that. And I don't know whether you've seen in the press last week, this is Stuart, the, I think, still global head of responsible investing at HSBC. And he has some different views, right, on what perhaps is commonly being preached by a lot of the advocates of ESG. But is it a scam then? It's not a scam. But what's really, really bad is greenwashing. Do you know what greenwashing is? Greenwashing is basically this activity where you try to convince people or mislead people that your company, your project, is much more environmentally friendly than it is, right? Using ESG as a marketing tool only. What does it mean for us in the world of cryptocurrencies? Basically, nobody can claim to run an ESG crypto fund. And I'm sure our chief legal officer, who's somewhere around here, is very happy when I say that. No standards are defined, right? So nobody can really claim that they are an ESG crypto fund. What also doesn't help is that traditional ESG metrics that we use to analyze companies are not very useful when we look at decentralized blockchain networks. Right? So one of the metrics that is kind of paid attention to, for example, is board diversity. Right? In a company, you always have a board. But then in a decentralized blockchain platform, you don't. So how would you assess diversity? Right? Clearly, different metrics are required. So what we can do in absence of any standards is to start to think about what reasonable sustainability characteristics should actually be. And that's why my appeal or my recommendation is not to say, oh, ESG is against cryptocurrencies. I think we as a community need to engage this topic and basically try to understand which of these characteristics are relevant for the types of platforms that we work day in and day out. And from an investor perspective, that's important because it will enable you to take the right investment decisions. The second big trend, and that's, I guess, why we're all here, is obviously crypto. And despite the fact that we've been 13 years into the journey, I think it's fair to say we're still early. There are two trends, two kind of macro ideas that are very important and that drive cryptocurrency adoption. The first one is that platform business models have been the key business model to create online companies in the past decade or so. There are many examples, right? There's Facebook, Airbnb, locally we have Grab. All of these companies obviously grew to a massive size. The other thing that's kind of very interesting is to understand that 50% of mankind now are millennials. And millennials, unlike me when I was a little bit younger, don't like to work for big companies. Yeah? They like to do their own project. They like to develop their own products. And what that means is that all of these millennials eventually need some sort of operating system to build their products on top. And that also fuels the adoption of cryptocurrencies and especially smart contract platforms. So we expect that the market capitalization of cryptocurrency markets will continue to grow. Probably not a straight line as I put here on the slide, no? Will be a little bit more volatile. Okay, so real quick, what is a smart contract platform then? The purpose of a smart contract platform, as we mentioned earlier, is to enable two peers to basically engage in economic activity without any intermediary. Right? So you can think of it as an operating system for this economic activity that is decentralized. The token that powers these platforms is basically there to pay for infrastructure type services, right? So for example, transaction costs, if you think about Ethereum or any of the other ones. Now, how are these platforms different from traditional companies? Well, they are not companies. That's one of the key takeaways that I want you to remember. So we do need to think about them completely differently. An operating system in the traditional world is something like Microsoft Windows or Mac OS or Unix. In the decentralized world, it can be something like Ethereum or Polkadot, any of these type of platforms. We think about these platforms as a very interesting opportunity to get exposure to cryptocurrency assets. And why? Is because they're giving you a macro type of an exposure into these markets, yeah? Because lots of other projects are building on top of these platforms. Now, why do I keep saying that we need a different approach to assess sustainability for blockchain ecosystems rather than companies? So I try to make it very clear with this little slide. Right? On the left-hand side, your right-hand side, we have how a traditional company is set up. Basically, you have the operational part of the company that eventually is busy with operations and sales to sell to a customer, right? The customer is separate to the company. And then you have a governance structure that basically controls the activity of the company. Obviously, that's the board and then ultimately the shareholders where the value accrues to ultimately. But then you think about a blockchain ecosystem, it's totally different, right? So blockchain ecosystems don't have a board, they don't have often executive management. But what groups of characteristics do they have? Well, first of all, a lot goes into mechanism design in the beginning, right? A lot goes also into how technology is developed, and ultimately, community is one of the other key aspects. Think a little bit more about the communities. They're not as clear-cut as in the traditional world, right? In the community, you can have somebody who is an investor, a token holder. You can have somebody who consumes the service. At the same time, they are probably also a builder, yeah? Somebody who is a software developer. It's not uncommon. So it's a bit more blurred than in the traditional sense. Hence, we need different methods. Why is this all very important, you might ask? Well, it's important because institutional investors are interested in digital assets. There's this survey by Fidelity, I think is run last year in September. It suggests that 71% of all the survey respondents are interested in digital assets. In Asia, the number is even higher, 81%. That's by number of survey participants. But then also, we note that there are only 3% of US and EU pension funds that have any exposure to crypto. And that doesn't mean that 3% of their AUM is invested, right? It means that 3% of the respondents are looking at it. So a large amount of these $50 trillion that pension funds actually manage doesn't touch crypto at all. So I would argue that institutional adoption that we always like to talk about hasn't really happened yet, okay? It's going to happen. These investors need something to analyze these different platforms. They cannot just, ape in, as we say sometimes in the community. They can't do that. So in absence of some generally accepted valuation model, all they have is basically to look at these characteristics that we're discussing today to make a judgment call on the quality of these platforms. But right now, nobody seems to care. Look at this. This chart shows the 5 most prominent digital assets as per this survey, right? And the first 3 ones, as you all know, so this is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin, run on very energy inefficient consensus algorithm. The fourth one, Ripple, has huge concentration of wealth. So up to 64% of all of XRP tokens sit in the top 100 accounts. And as you all know, Binance has limited number of active validators each round, right? Only 21. So there might be something that we call validator risk, which I talk about in a second. So what we predict is that once institutional investors understand these sustainability constraints or characteristics, they will have to pay attention to them, right? Right now, it seems like nobody cares, but that's not going to continue forever. So then, okay, I've talked a lot. How do we do it? So let's start with the low-hanging fruit, right? So if you are keen to select a smart contract platform, the first thing that you can do is use or invest only in smart contract platform tokens that basically use an energy-efficient mechanism. Some might say, well, if it's energy efficient, it's not secure. Actually, there's already research published in top academic journals that suggest that that is actually not true. And if configured correctly, the security levels are acceptable for economic transactions. If we wanted to get a little bit more sophisticated, we can also calculate CO2 emissions per validated transaction. And what I would also recommend, obviously, because I have half my foot in academia and research, is to pay attention to what researchers are doing. There's a recent paper by UCL that basically compares the existing smart contract platforms under the sustainability lens, and there's some interesting insights in that paper. Why is this important? Well, it's important because this environmental characteristic determines whether there's going to be adoption. Yeah? So if you think about European companies, they will have to report their adverse environmental impact according to the TCFD standard to their shareholders. And that's across the supply chain. What that means is that if you launch an NFT on an energy-intensive platform, you will have to report that adverse environmental impact. So in your next earnings call, you'll get questions by your investors. Why do you do this? And not only that, you also have to purchase carbon offsetting contracts to basically become neutral. Yeah? That's a real cost. So companies will choose which platform they're building on, because otherwise it's just not viable. Second, let's talk about S for social. So here, one example is wealth inequality. So often when we think about it in the traditional world, to have more even distribution of wealth across a society is perceived to be a good thing, better thing, right? What's interesting in the world of blockchains is that this wealth distribution is very transparent, right? We could just inspect the distributed ledger and see which wallet address owns how much. And here's the interesting thing. Obviously, as part of my work, I'm conducting a lot of empirical research. So we already found that a broader wealth distribution across all wallets on a public blockchain network is actually associated to excess returns. So in the end of the day, we're a fund management company. We want to do good, but we also want to do well, right? So looking at these characteristics really helps you to understand which platforms are ahead of others. Why? What's the explanation for this? It's very easy, right? If you have broader wealth distribution, then more people have a stake in the platform, then there's more software development activity that's good for the overall ecosystem. So what can you do with regards to wealth inequality? Well, you can compare different platforms using that metric. They're not the same. They're not all the same. Right? Even if the correlations in markets are very, very high today, this is not very well understood. So you should look at how they compare against each other. Also, you can look at whether this metric improves over time and what the platforms are doing to perhaps improve their situation. G for governance. So let's move on to validator risk. So as you know, in the blockchain world, we replace a central coordinator type of role with a validator or miner. And validators are, you can think of them as the basically the auditors of the blockchain world, they also propose and validate new transactions, right? So unfortunately, they can get hacked, and they can also go rogue. So these are two risks that we need to be aware of. So it's important to pay close attention. And just to kind of throw at you a recent example of why this matters. Some of you remember the Ronin hack recently, right? Show of hands. About $600 were lost, right? So if you look into the details, the Ronin platform was run or validated by 9 validators, 4 of which were run by one company. It's a very high hacking risk, right? So when we assess these platforms in our day-to-day work, we really pay attention. How many validators are out there? But then more importantly, how many of these nodes are actually run by the same entity, right, to manage this risk? All right, I guess I'm running out of time. So I could talk about this for a long while. Obviously, I only picked out 3 examples of data points that we're looking at, or characteristics that we're looking at. In our day-to-day work with the investment strategy, we have about 25 of these metrics that we update continuously. So just to summarize, right? Smart contract platforms are the operating systems for peer-to-peer commerce, and they're not companies. Smart contract platforms are extremely important because they already make up about 50% of the market cap if you subtract Bitcoin. And in our view, only the sustainable platforms will really be adopted. And that is true for entrepreneurs, but also big companies. So if you were an investor and you wanted to pick tokens that are sustainable, then you can try out some of the characteristics that I shared about, and that will help you eventually pick those who are really sustainable and can stick around for a longer time. That's pretty much it. I think we don't have time for Q&A, but I'm going to stick around for a little while. If you want to reach out, then we can have a quick chat. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn as well, and if you want to learn a little bit more about what we're doing at Modular Asset Management, then please check out our website, and then I'll be happy to answer your questions offline. Thank you so much for paying attention, and yeah, really good to be back in the face-to-face mode. Thank you. It's okay. No, I don't.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Daniel Liebau. Once again, a big round of applause on ESG characteristic of smart contract platforms. Okay, so next would be a special topic on the impact of guilds on the P2E ecosystem. So let us clear out this place first before we invite our speaker on stage. So how's everybody? Are you guys learning a lot of stuff today? Only the front people here, they just responded. The rest of the back is total silent. How at the back? Are you guys all learning a lot of stuff today? Wow. I didn't even hear the cricket sound also. It was really quiet. Okay, glad to see we have lots of you wonderful people here on a weekday. Super proud to see a lot of you wonderful people here on a weekday. Of course, weekday is a very busy day. It's a bit tough. And all you guys made an effort to be here. Give yourself a big round of applause. You guys are really wonderful. Thank you very much for joining. Oh, we can still got more chat, don't worry. Okay, so right after this, we have another 4 more talks. Okay, we got 4 more talks more right after this, and followed by at 1 o'clock, we're going to go on a break, and we'll be back at 1:40, okay? So right now, we're just going to invite our next one. Just to check, is this speaker here, Hayden? Is Hayden here? Ah, he's here. Okay, please be seated first, sir. I'll invite you. Let us clear out the stage here first.
I'll see the slides in front of me. Where do I point the clicker? The clicker's up there. Okay, and where do I point it?
Okay, looks like there is a slight change. Earlier, we thought Mr. Hayden was not here. We were about to do the other talk, but so he's here. So let's start with his. The next talk would be the regulators are coming. Are Luna, UST, and Algo stablecoin doomed? Let's welcome Hayden Hughes, CEO at Alpha Impact, on stage. There you go, sir.
Okay. Great. Okay, hello. Nice to see everyone. So my name is Hayden Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Alpha Impact. And Alpha Impact, as you can see, is so I'll just go a little bit more. So I've been in crypto since 2017, and I am, for my sins, a recovering lawyer. And Alpha Impact is a non-custodial social trading platform. So we work with top traders and people who want to become or emulate those top traders. And we're also building an off-chain data analytics platform. So here's the agenda for today. WTF just happened. I won't spell out exactly what that acronym means. I trust everyone knows. We're going to be talking a little bit about Luna. We're going to talk about, are the regulators coming? And I think this is a really important point to be considering. I'm not going to go crazy into the super boring legal stuff, because I know that tends to drive people to sleep. The next part is going to be looking at previous regulatory headwinds. So we're going to be looking at previous times where regulators have cracked down. What happened, what was the recovery, and what really happened after that. And I'll be making some predictions about what's happening next. So Luna, let's just talk a little bit about Luna. Luna was one of the top 10 crypto assets. I'm just going to stand a bit further back. Can everyone still hear me in the back? Okay. So Luna was one of the top 10 assets. And actually, in their white paper from early 2018, there's an interesting sentence here. It says, Terra operates under a decentralized guarantee of solvency, eliminating risks of currency failures and Soros attacks. So they're pretty woke to the idea that an algorithmic stablecoin could actually be attacked. And somewhere along the way, things changed. So the original plan was to have Terra hold its value through contracting and changing the monetary supply of Luna, similar to what central banks do with traditional currencies. They're the ones that cause all the inflation that we now have to deal with. And eventually the proposal changed, and UST as we know it today was born. So UST was a little bit different from other stablecoins. Other stablecoins have a deposit of $1. UST was actually created by destroying $1 worth of Luna. And so what we saw is that $1 of Luna could always be redeemed for $1 of UST, and vice versa. And so this created a dependency. Sorry, hold on. Excuse me, team, can I switch to the handheld mic, please? I don't know where it is. So this created a dependency. For me to be able to trust UST, I also had to trust Luna. And that meant that I had to believe that cashing out UST into Luna was going to be a good thing. Okay, let's just testing. Okay, great. And so a lot of folks developed the impression very quickly recently, which is, I'm sure you're all aware, that Luna was actually not a safe investment. And so this came from a platform called Anchor. For those that don't know, Anchor, they've pitched themselves here as the reliable savings protocol. Anchor was or still is, a DeFi staking platform where you could deposit UST and earn a 20% rate of interest. And so for stablecoins, this was actually one of the best deals on the market. I know there's some platforms, Cake DeFi and others, that had a higher rate. But for a non-fluctuating or theoretically non-volatile stablecoin like UST, this was a pretty good deal. And in crypto, we tend to think of this as the risk-free rate. And so at one point, 72% of the supply of UST was actually staked on Luna, or on Anchor. So this created a massive problem because there was a ton of UST being minted to incentivize people to put more on. Some have called this Ponzi-nomics. I won't go that far. But there's a dynamic at play where if you give me your money and trust me, I'll give you more. So that was what happened on Anchor. So let's talk a little bit about the death spiral. So in a scenario where people don't believe that Luna is a good thing to be holding anymore, then all of a sudden that creates pressure not only on Luna, but also on UST. So people would need to, if I don't believe that Luna is a good thing for me to hold or touch or want to be involved with in any way, I'll actually sell my UST. And this has a deleterious effect because selling UST and destroying it means that you're actually creating more Luna. And if you then go and sell the Luna, it has a kind of a double dipping effect where you're creating more Luna, which expands the supply and decreases the price, and you're selling that Luna. So you're hitting the price twice. So this creates selling pressure for both Luna and UST simultaneously. So what happened? So someone shorted Bitcoin, Luna, and UST all at the same time. And I won't get into the specific mechanics. It's fairly complex, the actual trades. But it's alleged that an insider firm, someone from Wall Street, Citadel, or BlackRock actually did this. And what ended up happening was that they simultaneously, on a day with very low liquidity, shorted all three of these assets at once. And that created the death spiral. So heavy losses were suffered. And if you can believe this, I mean, this is actually not as bad as it got for Luna. It actually got quite a lot closer to zero than this price. I just like this photo. So you had an asset that used to be worth, you could see it was worth almost $100 at the end of April, crashing down to effectively zero. That's the death spiral. So I want to share a little bit about how Alpha Impact, we haven't been directly involved in Luna, but we have traders on our platform that try to tell the rest of the world what is happening in crypto and try to decode this complicated world. And so this is me. I actually posted on the platform saying, I think there's more downside here. So this is the day before the crash. I was short Luna at that time, and for all the people that followed me for free, they would have had access to see this insight. This was one of our top returns on the day. So this is on May 10th. So someone actually made 208% on that day, shorting Luna. That's a short that I made, the exit there, 1,500%. And this is our top monthly return, and I took this just yesterday. So we have a lot of traders on our platform that have learned how to anticipate, deal with, and really engage with the market in a way that allows them to profit. So that's just a little plug for what we do. So here's the question. Are the regulators coming? If things happen, if banks are too big to fail, if there's losses to retail investors, the regulators will generally step in. And I think it's useful to understand what could actually happen and what would the implications be. So the official goals for regulators are to manage unemployment and inflation, obviously, but they also have goals to protect unsophisticated investors. And so you see here the photo of the snake oil salesman. So this is 200 years ago. These snake oil salesmen used to roam around and sell these cure-all potions. You know, if you have diabetes, if you're bald, if you feel sick, no matter what the problem was, you could get better, they claimed, by buying their potion. And so in crypto, there's a perception in some circles, especially in regulatory circles, that it's still the Wild West in crypto. And so US regulators lead the world in making noise about things in the crypto space, but also not passing any laws. And they've passed 0 laws to do with crypto since the 2017 ICO run. So let's take a look at some of the previous regulatory headwinds, because I think it's useful if we're asking the question, what's going to happen next? It's important for us to understand what has happened previously and what might happen this time. So the SEC working to actually slow down and stop ICOs is one of the things that really started the last bear market in late 2017 and early 2018. So you've seen all kinds of headlines. The SEC stops coin offerings, fires warning shot, files charges over ICO, and lawyer predicting an assembly line of enforcement. This didn't actually happen. They didn't actually go after 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 token issuers. But just the threat of the SEC saying, this is a serious issue, we think this is worth paying attention to, and we're going to try to slow this down or stop it, that was enough to actually really slow the industry down. And so the impact was that the bear market actually started then. We went down 83% that year in terms of asset prices. Third parties, including Facebook, Twitter, all the social media platforms, basically made it impossible to advertise ICOs, which I think was a necessary step at that point in time because there were a lot of scams happening. And the ICO funding market died for 2 years, but we did end up seeing a gradual recovery and a stronger industry that emerged on the other side of that. And so you can actually see the global venture capital funding here. I mean, it's staggering. The delta between 2017 and 18 was very staggering. But then if you actually zoom out and you look on the long term, the line is going up. So with the amount of adoption and capital that's now in the space, I don't think whatever happens in the next 12 to 24 months means that it's game over. In fact, quite the opposite. I think that there are some great companies that will be built during this market cycle. So after 2017, no actual laws were passed. You had a number of other countries, including here in Singapore, pass laws to address token issuance, but the law hasn't caught up, and so there's still a lot of carve-outs and loopholes. So next, I think it's worthwhile talking about the China ban. This is also something that happened in 2017. Now, for those OGs in the room, this is not actually China ban number 1. This is like the 3rd or 4th time China banned it. But we could just pretend for the purposes of this that this is when it happened. And so you actually see here in early 2017, most of the trading volume in Bitcoin globally leading up to the start of 2017 was on these Chinese platforms. And if you talk to them, it was an absolutely crazy time. And China came out and said that they're investigating the FX and anti-money laundering practices of those exchanges. And you see virtually within the span of 1 month, it was a collapse. So there was no actual impact on the price, and we actually saw the bull market continue. So China Ban 2 happened in 2021 when China said they were banning all of the mining activity that was happening in China. So what you see here is hash rate, which is just a nice way of saying mining power. And you see China was previously the biggest, and then they dropped off precipitously. So miners moved offshore in droves, and the actual impact on the market was positive. So this assumes that you actually started buying Bitcoin at the time when the Chinese government banned it. And you can see here it's actually a positive EV exercise, which means you would have made money every single time. So it presents a great mid-cycle buying opportunity. I like to think of the China ban being the flag that says the bull market is now 50% over, because it tends to happen 50 to 60% through each bull market. And markets rebound. So stablecoin regulations. So the Europeans are currently considering legislating stablecoins. And it's not clear what it would look like because of Europe's framework. Sorry. Because of Europe's regulatory framework, the EU has a lot of work to do to actually pass laws. So this is currently a bill that's been approved that's being discussed. And the idea is that stablecoins would be regulated by the Pan-European Securities Regulator, ESMA. So this will be slow, and I think that the Europeans might actually lead the way here. And in a US election year, I don't think the US will lead the way in terms of regulating. So the US, so are the regulators coming? Anecdotally, you know, we make pilots retire when they turn 65. I don't know why the US government, everyone is 75 to 90. If anyone has an answer to that, please approach me after. But this is Janet Yellen saying that stricter regulations are needed. And Terra is, I think, just the start of what we'll see from the US. So this is a quote from Janet. Financial risk mounts as the outstanding market cap of stablecoins is growing rapidly. And I actually think that stablecoin regulations in the US and other countries are inevitable because they're growing so rapidly that they're becoming a major force in the global financial sphere. So it's not going to happen this year. We've already got a lot happening in the United States with inflation, and don't even get me started. I could talk for hours and hours on end. But lots of stuff happening that I think makes it very difficult politically for any changes in the United States. So I want to share with the audience some predictions for what I think is likely to happen next. So my first prediction is that, and by the way, there will be a few minutes at the end for questions. My first prediction is that Luna will never be the same. And I think CZ said it best. He said he's disappointed with how the incident was handled by the Terra team. Binance requested the teams to restore the network, burn the extra minted Luna, and recover the UST peg. Remember, this whole thing started with UST, something that was supposed to be worth $1, death spiraling, and no longer being worth $1. That caused a crisis of confidence that, in CZ's words, could have been recovered, but they haven't done anything. And he notes that this is actually in sharp contrast to another project that had problems, Axie Infinity, who were very responsive, proactive, and had a plan. So this is Ethereum Classic. And Ethereum Classic is an interesting story because it was created in 2015. There was a project that raised money in 2015 using the original Ethereum. And it turned out there was a bug in the Ethereum blockchain. So they made a new version of Ethereum. And this was the hardcore old school one, Ethereum Classic. Not used by anyone. And it's actually been attacked, and there have been multiple, I wouldn't call it hacks, but what we call 51% attacks, where the blockchain is taken over by bad people. And this has happened multiple times. And you can see the price here since the start of 2017 has actually risen astronomically. So it's clear to me that there is precedent in the markets for a kind of a dead coin that doesn't have a lot of confidence from the market to grow very aggressively. The second prediction I want to make, and I just want to be very clear about this, is that I think there's a massive risk in lending platforms. So today, there are a number of centralized lending protocols, and the basic pitch is this. You give them your assets, they deploy your assets and make some money, and they pay you a fixed rate of interest, obviously much lower than they're actually generating. So these platforms, there's dozens of them, and I think there could be a massive problem brewing that could cause very serious events in the crypto industry. So centralized protocols like Nexo, BlockFi, et cetera, had exposure to UST. Now, BlockFi, I don't think had any direct exposure, but BlockFi, these platforms also lend. They don't just borrow, they lend. And so they would now have people that would have lost a substantial amount of assets that they wouldn't be able to repay. And by the way, there are actually, I'm not going to name which one, but there's a lending protocol that's kind of on this list I'm about to show you that was going to send a speaker and ended up pulling the speaker. So I don't know if that's coincidental or not. I'm not going to say which one. So some of these lending protocols might have had third-party risk, and some of them might have actually gone and taken your money and just bought UST and put it in Anchor, which would mean that they could actually be not having enough liquidity today. And so this phenomenon might actually explain why the rates haven't changed. And so you could see here, there's only these 4 platforms that have reduced their interest rates. And I could just tell you, I'm a market professional, the ability to generate yield on deposited assets has changed. So I can now generate less yield than I could on May 1st or May 2nd. And you would expect that institutions that pay interest would reflect this in the interest that they pay. But only 4 of them have. And I know a lot of the people from a lot of the teams, BlockFi, Abra, HODLNOT, my friends at HODLNOT, I think they're here, very great company. They've reduced their rates. That tells me that they're actually not afraid of having withdrawals from the platform. But the others have not changed anything. And that tells me that they're actually afraid of people withdrawing. Now, I don't know if they don't have enough to repay those loans, but it's certainly a feasible possibility. And you can see the yields are different as well. And so the thesis, if some of these platforms are underwater, and just to be very clear, I'm not saying that I think any of these platforms are underwater. I'm just saying there is a risk that they could be. If they are underwater and don't have enough to repay people, then they would, of course, be much happier to take a slow loss over time rather than have a bank run and potentially cost the entire business. So if one of these large lending platforms collapses, I think that would cause a crisis of confidence of 2008 proportions. That could affect USDT. I won't talk a lot about USDT, but there have been people over the years who have been saying that maybe it's not truly backed one-to-one with dollars. I don't know what the case is, but this could be a massive crisis. So prediction number 3. The VC landscape is changing. So RIP good times. Those of us who have been around for a while probably recognize this. So the funding market has drastically changed. And actually, Alpha Impact just got our lead investor for our safe round, so we're okay. But we're hearing a lot from VCs that things have really changed. And everyone assumed that all these VCs had invested in Luna and that Luna was a safe thing to do. All the biggest names in crypto had invested in Luna, Terra Labs, and everyone had this assumption that, well, those guys did the checking, right? This is a quote from a VC earlier this week. We have time to do the due diligence we didn't do in 2021. So this is just a shift of how the VC landscape is changing. And I talked a little bit about dry powder, the amount of capital that VCs have. So we're now at a record high. Prediction 4, Luna will be like an Ethereum Classic. Talked a little bit about this. Prediction 5, the US will regulate stablecoins. It's just a question of when. As I mentioned, the lending protocol could go down. That could cause a systemic risk to the industry. Other governments will regulate stablecoins, and DeFi could temporarily shrink. Prediction 6, the Bitcoin halving in early 2024 will see another bull market. So one thing that I've learned is that what goes down must go up. So the supply of Bitcoin contracts every 4 years. That causes a bull market within 18 months after that. So we're pretty comfortable with that reality in 2024. So thank you very much, everyone. Really grateful to have you all here. This is us. We're doing a platform demo. We've booked a meeting room over near the cafe at Sweet Spot. So if you want to come and check out Alpha Impact and get a demo of what we're doing, you're welcome to scan the QR code. My details are here. So thank you very much, and really looking forward to hearing your questions. Okay, no questions, sorry. You can come talk to me after, I'll be around. Thank you.
A round of applause once again for Mr. Hayden, everyone. With the topic of the regulators are coming, are Luna, UST, and Algo stablecoin doomed? Okay, our next topic is the impact of guilds on the P2E ecosystem. So I'd like to welcome our speaker, Mr. Felix Sim, co-founder and project lead at Salad Ventures. Let's give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, everyone. So it's been a long time since we were able to gather together physically at an event like this. And obviously, that makes me very happy and very excited to be sharing with you today on this topic. And this also reminds me of probably one of the most memorable events that I've had in my life. And that was actually my 18th birthday. So what happened then was, with every typical 18th birthday, you would invite your friends, they would come with gifts, they would eat a dinner that nobody likes, they would give you the gifts, and then they would leave. And every 18-year-old would like to look forward to the time when your friends leave because you can then open your gifts. So that's what I did. And I opened up all the presents, and I was really excited because I could guess what was going to be inside those boxes. And the first box that I opened was a gaming mouse. Amazing. It was the best gaming mouse that money could buy. Well, actually, no, it was the best gaming mouse that my friends could afford, so they gave that to me. And then the second box, there was a gaming keyboard, and then there was a mouse pad and all that kind of stuff. So it was great because I loved to play games competitively. Now then, my dad, he was watching me open these gifts, and he was sort of standing by the side. And when I'm done opening these presents, he then came up to me and said to me one thing that kept ringing in my head over and over again that I could never forget. And the thing that he said to me was, "Son, playing games will never make you rich." So I thought about that for a while, and I thought, that can't be true. So after a long time, to 13th of May 2021, when I became a father of my own, I was at a balcony having my morning coffee, scrolling through my phone, looking at YouTube. I then came across a video. And the title of the video says, NFT, Play to Earn in the Philippines. And I said, this has got to be a scam. This has got to be another video that talks about how to make money in 30 seconds if you pay me $6,000 or something like that, right? It's got to be one of those videos. So I did what you probably should not do when you come across these videos. I clicked on the video. I watched it, and I thought, this is crazy. So that brought me down a rabbit hole of doing more and more research on this thing called Play to Earn, starting from the 13th of May 2021, almost a year ago today. And what I found, it was absolutely stunning and unbelievable. I found that there were actually millions of players, millions of people who are already playing play-to-earn games or blockchain games. I also found that there were 1.4 million, probably more now, wallets linked to the apps or to blockchain games. And the craziest thing was by the time I realized about this thing called Play to Earn and blockchain games, there were already more than 1,000 games online. So you may think that this is probably nothing. It's probably another get-rich-quick scheme. It's probably another fad. And then, people will move on, the industry will change, and everybody will forget about blockchain games. So that's what I thought at first as well. But instead of trying to predict the future based on a thought, I was thinking maybe we could look at history to try and predict the future. And I'm referring to the history of evolution, and I would summarize two things. Firstly, the evolution of gaming and the evolution of the internet. And I've broken it down into version 1, 2, and 3. For those of you old enough, you would know that in the past, when we wanted to play games, or when we wanted to play games with friends, we had to go to an arcade. Remember the days when your parents would give you an allowance and give you money, and then you would not spend that money because you wanted to go to the arcade after school? That's the arcade that I'm talking about. we used to have to go to arcades to play games with friends. And those games were not recorded, your scores were not kept, so you had to keep going back over and over again. In the internet, version 1.0, we access the internet to consume information. And in the second version of gaming, gaming consoles came online. There was a Sony PlayStation, well before that there was the NES, there was the Segas, there was all that stuff, right? So then you were able to play games at home. And with the 2.0 of the internet, you're able to also socialize with friends, which means that you're also able to play with friends and with strangers online in your own home. And with gaming 3.0, obviously now there are more mobile games and mobile gamers than console and PC and whatnot. People are starting to play games on their phones, and in the internet, it has now become an ownership economy. Now, not only gaming and internet has evolved, work has also evolved. Again, in 3 different versions, but this time with something in between. So work 1.0 is when you had to report to an office at 9 in the morning, putting on proper business attire, taking the bus, heading to the office, getting work done, and then going for lunch, coming back, leaving at 6. Work 1.0. And you were working for somebody else, one boss, usually for many, many years. Work 1.5 was when the nomad lifestyle sort of started to begin and to be more popular, where you could work for still one boss, but you can work anywhere that you want in the world. Bali for most. And for work 2.0, that's when people decided that they wanted to work for themselves and they wanted to work on their own terms. They want to work as and when they want and earn as much as they need and done. So that's when the gig economy started to become very, very popular. I believe that we are now at work 2.5. And work 2.5 is started by this thing called play to earn. So the question that I then ask myself is this. So what does work 3.0 look like? I think that work 3.0 looks like this. Work 3.0 will be the intersect between interest and income. And that's what work 3 would look like. But it requires some kind of a catalyst. It requires some kind of an organization, some kind of an entity in order to make this happen faster, hopefully in our lifetime. And this entity, in my presentation, can be seen as being a guild. So imagine this garden where you have flowers all around, different types, beautiful garden, butterflies pollinating. So the analogy that I'm drawing here is that if guilds are butterflies, blockchain games are flowers, players are also flowers, and the guilds have a responsibility to pollinate the garden in order to increase and to beautify the entire play-to-earn ecosystem and the play-to-earn space. The relationship between guilds, players, and games is symbiotic, and there is no other way around it. However, it's not always a bed of roses, because it's very, very difficult to start, manage, and scale a guild. And most guilds don't make it past a certain stage. And that is because it is very, very tough to firstly look for a game that you want to partner with, raise funds from your LP to invest in these games, find the right players to play those games, monitor them to make sure that they are playing the games, pay them to make sure that they keep playing games, and so on and so forth. It is very, very difficult and very, very complicated to manage a guild. But despite all this, we still believe that guilds provide investment, structure, and ownership to the play-to-earn ecosystem. However, if you are quite active in the play-to-earn space, you will also probably be aware that there is the other side of this same coin, where people ask if guilds are value providers or value extractors. Do guilds do this simply to profit and nothing else? Or are they really trying to provide value to the entire ecosystem? And that then begets another question. Will guilds be there for the future of work or not? Are they going to be completely irrelevant? I believe in order to answer this question, we need to agree that there is a cost to earning. You are always paying a price in return for the freedom to earn. So think about Work 1.0, where you have to go to an office, report to work for 9 hours, 10 hours a day, including lunch, and then leave. What is the price you pay when you earn that way? The price that you're paying is you're paying with time away from friends, away from family, because you're stuck in the office. Work 1.5, the remote work mindset. You're still paying a price, and the price that you pay is the inability to build camaraderie with your colleagues and with your bosses, therefore maybe no more promotion, because you're working remotely, because you're away, as compared to your colleagues who are in the office. Work 2, the gig economy. You can work as much as you want or as little as you want, but there is no, you're paying with the price of surety. You may not be able to make ends meet if you're not able to get a gig. And in the case of play to earn, the most straightforward price to pay is the entry fee to purchase these NFT accounts, these game accounts, in order to start playing the game and to earn. So guilds do that, and I think guilds provide more than just the initial capital. And I've summarized the value that guilds provide to the play-to-earn ecosystem into 3 I's. The first I is inclusion. The most basic thing that guilds do is they help with access and adoption. So they help players who want to get access into blockchain games enter these games by lending them assets, lending them these NFTs so they can start playing and start earning. They also help games with adoption, because imagine without guilds, games would have to go to the mass market and try and find players one at a time, like a regular mobile game. That's going to take a long time, and they're probably going to not be able to grow as quickly as if they worked with a guild. These are some examples of guilds that have been providing access to the world of play to earn in Southeast Asia, in India, in the Americas, and in Europe, and there are a lot more. Right now, there are probably about 25,000 guilds around the world, both big and small. And the second value that guilds provide to this space is infrastructure. What we're seeing is that there are many guilds who have started to create some software, create platforms, create dashboards, analytics tools to players as well as to games. So players could use these tools to try and identify the next most profitable play-to-earn game. Games can also use these tools to try and identify which are their most popular competitors and how they can structure and design their game economy and their game mechanics to meet the market's demands. So these tools are typically developed by or invested into by guilds. With these tools, or with access to these tools, guilds then act as a funnel. Guilds act as a funnel for players who are looking to enter into the play-to-earn economy by filtering out the signal from the noise, because there are a lot of very bad games out there as well. So they filter the signal from the noise. They also own a forum where players can interact with other like-minded players, sort of like a community or a Discord group. And they also then provide fair access to these players into these games. So guilds act as a funnel. But despite doing all that, providing access, inclusion, and providing infrastructure, the play-to-earn space is not spared when the overall crypto markets tank. So guilds need to do more than just provide inclusion or access and infrastructure. I believe the guilds need to do more, which is why I've left the third I to the last, which is invincibility. Guilds have to work with the games that they partner with in order to get them to the level of invincibility. And they can do it in 2 ways. The first way is very straightforward, to give feedback to the game founders, to the game teams, directly and work more closely together with these games. They can help them to design game mechanics. Guilds should help these game teams design tokenomics and so on and so forth. And guilds should also not think in too much of a corporate way. Guilds have to think like a community with their games. They should help games build up their communities as opposed to building up their own guild communities. And by doing so, we'll follow what Albert Einstein said, which is to strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. As guilds provide more value to games, the entire ecosystem will improve. So in summary, guilds provide value to the P2E ecosystem in these two ways. First, they provide access for everyone, especially to the players, to get into the space. Second, they also provide tools for growth. So those dashboards and analytics tools that can help either players perform better or help games grow to get to the next level. But the third of having this builder as opposed to taker mindset is something that guilds have to also provide in order to grow the entire ecosystem. There will be, in the next 12 to 18 months, more guilds coming online, regardless of the market, because now it is cheaper to start a guild. When we started a guild a year ago today, you needed a lot of capital just to get started. Today, you need a fraction of what we did in the past. So I think there will be more, I believe there will be more guilds that will come online, and obviously there will also be more games coming online. Now with this increase in the number of guilds and in the number of games, in order for both guilds, games, and players to coexist, they have to figure out a way to provide value to each other rather than to take from each other, rather than for games to take monies from guilds in order to sell them NFTs and give them nothing else in return, or for guilds to send scholars or send players into their games to yield farm their games and take it out and dump the tokens in return again. Guilds and games will have to figure out a way to work together in order for the entire P2E ecosystem to improve. So if you're involved or invested or interested in the play-to-earn space, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. My name is Felix Sim, and I look forward to creating the future together with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you once again to our speaker, Mr. Felix Sim, with the topic, the impact of guilds on the P2E ecosystem. Next topic would be blockchain, a community of create, connect, and collaborate. We'd like to welcome our speaker, Mike Chiam, founding board member, Asia Blockchain Association lawyer, PD Legal LLC advocate, and sociolator. Welcome, Mr. Mike Chiam, once again on stage. Round of applause, everybody.
Very warm welcome. Good afternoon to all attendees, visitors to Singapore, if you flew in from overseas. Well, obviously the topic today is create, connect, and collaborate. And my name is Mike Chiam. I'm a lawyer. Most of my clients amongst you are very steeped in the crypto, NFT, blockchain, payments, and fintech industry. The law firm that I work for, we advise financial institutions, family offices, funds. We have an extended team in Shanghai, India. And we are connecting with legal and compliance specialists globally. I'd like to thank the organizers today for inviting me to speak. Today, I'm standing in for one of the icons of the blockchain ecosystem in Singapore. Some of you may have met him, Professor David Lee. He couldn't make it today. So why are you here from a lawyer? What is the role that we play in this ever-expanding blockchain ecosystem? crypto assets, valuation of Bitcoin, price discovery, market making of tokens, offering of new tokens. I think every nuance in fintech and financial innovation requires careful, forward-thinking practitioners, both from legal and non-legal industries, to anticipate gaps. I think I could not put this better than my previous speakers, Hayden, who is a recovering lawyer. I'm not sure if he's still in the room, as well as Felix. The way we consume content will change. So, I think today, I want to share that we have a thriving ecosystem in Singapore. And from my day-to-day course of work, I will not be able to see, unless we attend such conferences, to what extent has the industry come to date. From Singapore, some of you may be innovating in markets nearby, in Malaysia, in Vietnam, Cambodia. Singapore has always been a key financial hub. Singapore will also be a launchpad for new technologies to spring forth. One of the messages I have for the audience today is, in my view, Singapore remains to be blockchain friendly. As regulation will come in, you are already part of this environment, and we have the opportunity to shape some of the landscape that is happening today. So to create, and I don't have a very good picture to show how to create, but when we were thinking of the new venture builder, one of our founding members said, we should print t-shirts. So an opportunity here is, if you want a Web 3.0 t-shirt, please come to meet us after this. We will introduce you to some of the ecosystem builders that we are connecting and collaborating with, and we will issue you a Web 3.0 t-shirt. What is there to create in the blockchain ecosystem? If you're already here, you already know. Blockchain is going to be a disruptor. I started not always from the legal and regulatory space. In fact, when I was in school, I really wanted to be a tech disruptor. How I got to connect with a lot of the participants today started more than 10 years ago when I was building a Web 2.0 fintech website. The website was quite simple. It was built on ASP.NET. It compared over 200 financial products, and then we wanted to bring these products or applicants or customers to MasterCard, Citibank, UOB, OCBC, banks that operate in Singapore for those who don't know. When I had a term sheet and I met a few founders and I met a few funders and investors, they said, can you make your website a Web 2.0 website? I did not know what that meant, but that meant that I spent another 2 years involving myself with conference organizations, the digital movement, E27, SG Entrepreneurs. Some of these organizations are still here today. In 2016, what did the ecosystem look like? In 2016, we didn't have the organizations that we had today. I think, in fact, there were only 1 or 2 meetups for people who were dabbling with the Ethereum network, were dabbling with ETH. In 2016, we only had Access and SFA, and we only had 1 hub, ATRR. So the regulator also wanted to know how to regulate technology that they shouldn't be regulating, but they should be encouraging. So this is where a lot of the collaboration happens. This is where a lot of the connecting happens. The regulator was interested in 3 things mainly. How do we regulate and evaluate and assess tokens of all kinds, not just Bitcoin, Ethereum? They wanted to know all the new innovation tokens, the smart contracts that come out from these protocols. Second, they wanted to know how to evaluate and assess transactions. They know how to do that in the TradFi space, but in the DeFi space, how do we trace, how do we track, how do we regulate transactions? The third, how do we regulate e-wallets or crypto wallets? So these are questions I believe today have yet to be fully solved by the industry. Because when you say you have a crypto wallet, you could have a non-custodial wallet, which means that this could be sitting anywhere, in any jurisdiction, in any server around the world. So this was the early days. We have a couple of industry players. I failed to mention, these were formed by partially the traditional banks as well. You have UOB, FinTech Labs. We have a couple of banks, a couple of fund managers. The blockchain landscape today looks a bit different. It's meant to be small, so you don't have to zoom in, and I can share the slides later. I believe this was prepared, by MDA with SG Digital. And as you can see, I think exchanges will become commonplace. There will be technologies, but how do we build TradFi to DeFi links? How do we make crypto asset investments a safe, regulation-light industry for participants and innovation to take place? One of my final messages for you is to find ways to collaborate with one another, because the industry itself will require active voices, advocacy. If you have read Malcolm Gladwell's book, the mavens, the connectors, and the salespeople actually have an impact on how we connect and we collaborate. Part of why I'm here today, quite aside from Professor David Lee's invitation, is I'm invited by the Asia Blockchain Association, aims to be an advocate for blockchain technology, connecting more institutions within the region and not just within Singapore. I'll share very shortly and very briefly some of the founding members who have joined us, and perhaps there will be an opportunity for you to connect with them if you stay in Singapore for another week on the 9th of June. And some of the supporters will be mentioned as well. I won't go very deep into how the NFT ecosystem is collaborating in the metaverse, but there are different stakeholders here. This will be an opportune time for me to shout out to some of the companies, the Web3 developers, Web3 venture builders, investors in the Web3 space, Enigma Ventures, Honeycomb Web3, they are here somewhere today. I mentioned, hold on, let me just put this slide first. So to meet and collaborate, I wish to introduce David Rhodes. He's currently the global marketing lead for Elevandi initiative by the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Please reach out to him. Travis, who has been a connector, a community lead in so many ways. He's also the reason why I'm speaking here today. He's a founding member of ABA along with myself. He's a founder of Off-Chain Singapore, the Singapore chapter. He also runs the institutional sales with blockchain.com, formerly known as Autonomy Labs. Brandon Chi is somewhere in the conference here today. Next to Travis, thanks so much. Yeah. Brandon runs Enigma Ventures. It's a new venture fund that is collaborating between TradFi investors and the DeFi space. And before I end, I just wanted to share two pictures here. You can choose, and I call it the water lily effect, but I've decided to put a Monet version of the water lily. So I've been told by a very wise advisor to Web3 companies, a good friend of mine, YC, 2 weeks ago. Just celebrated my birthday, and then we had a bit of a meditative session, meetup between crypto folks who are, I think, reeling from Terra Luna's crash and so on. And he wanted to share this little puzzle. If the water lilies in a pond doubles every day, And by the 30th day, the pond is full. On which day is the pond half full? Anybody? Sorry. 29th day, exactly. So if it doubles every day, the 29th day, thank you very much. And I think when we talk about collaborating and networks, startups like Facebook used to mention that their valuation is based on Metcalfe's law. You may believe or subscribe to it. I think to some extent, Metcalfe's law applies for a lot of network businesses. This is where your mobile phones can come in handy if you have a high sensitivity camera that can pick up the QR code. On the left, you have the off-chain Telegram group, which I suggest and recommend that you join. A lot of the knowledge that I have didn't come across my desk. It came from community and network events like these. I think there's also a chance to thank our sponsors, ChainUp. They are sponsoring that event. For those of you who can make it, we would very much love to meet you and connect with you there. And that'll be all. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Mr. Felix Sim. Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Mike Chiam, why am I saying? So sorry, my bad, so sorry, sir. Thank you once again, Mr. Mike Chiam, founding board member of Asia Blockchain Association, lawyer, PD, legal, LLC, advocates, and solicitors. My God, I cannot pronounce it, solicitors. All right, so that was the topic earlier. Blockchain, a community of create, connect, and collaborate. Okay, moving down to our final topic of the day would be cross-chain interoperability bridge by JC Josol, Aramid Finance. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. JC.
Hello. All right. Hey guys. I think it's lunchtime, so it's quite. You guys must be very hungry and stuff like that. So we are the Emerald Finance, and Emerald Finance is actually a decentralized cross-chain bridge. And basically, I'm just going to show you what's different from others and stuff like that. So from day one, we'll be a very decentralized global team members and stuff like that. So there's people around the world, and it's 24/7. And there's our partners over here. So what we have is we are a grant recipient from Algorand and Near Protocol. Yeah. So as for today, and Web3 should be interoperable because you know, Algorand and Ethereum and Bitcoin can't talk to each other, and we want to remain that way. And we believe that Algorand networks have the interoperability capability. So our vision will be more secure, decentralized, and it must be a permission bridge because having a centralized bridge is no way to compare for others. And we love the community, like you, and we want the community to be part of it. It's exciting. So usually, most of the people heard about the bridge and it's very difficult to use, but I'll focus highly on the UI experience. And basically, this is how the user connect the wallet. And basically, that's how they switch from Ethereum to Polygon or even Algorand on your networks. In the very high level architectural kind of things where you can see the users has been locked the token on the bridge, and it must be secure in a way that when they sign, and we have a validated nodes that we should provide to ensure the security within. And basically, Algorand have its own stuff with a state-proof ASP standard which allows you to lower down the gas fees for Ethereum. And the asset itself can be true ZK snuck in a ZK-proof method in the Algorand method. So we're not really Algorand-centric, but somehow that Algorand and Cardano is the one that solved blockchain trilemma. And basically, we want to be part of that ecosystem these are most of the blockchains that you'll be using in the coins. And basically, most of them are EVM as today in the MetaMask, but we want to be out of that EVM. So imagine in the current situation you have is like wormhole for Solana, but this is the wormhole for Algorand. As you can see today, there's a lot of NFTs and asset around and stuff like that. And your asset like Bored Apes or Mutant Apes live on Ethereum. And sometimes, it may be in the near future, we want to bridge to that Polygon and everything, but remains your asset intact. So which means the metadata itself is fully intact, is not a wrap asset, and is finally very secure. As any project does, there's always a government tokens and utility and stuff like that. So I'm not here to pitch you about the tokens and everything. So the government's tokens is down there and is a revenue sharing. So most of the projects will just incentivize people to do some trading, or you'll find start staking and so on. So we come a long way. It's seriously come a long way, because one of the things is we kicked off with Algorand grants, and so we are part of the Algorand ecosystem, and then we slowly go to Ethereum, Polygon, and right now we are at near grant stage. So we have been granted with near grants. So we are bridging from that and so on. Yeah, the good news is we'll be in consensus. If anyone in consensus, we'll be in Austin. So we'd love to meet you and after the stage in AVM Austin. Yeah. So and probably we will implement Allura and near protocols on that, and adding new EVMs, change and ZKs as well. So thank you all for your time, and I don't want to bother your lunch. So we'll see you in Austin. And by the way, please join the Twitter, and you never know what it comes. I give you a surprise then. Please scan. Thank you. Any questions? You can just feel free.
Okay, we can take in questions. We have lots of time. Any questions, anybody? Just head on to the mic. Or just raise your hand. I can just walk towards you. Any question, anyone?
Nah, I don't think so.
Oh, there's one. Yes, sir. Just come over here, this way. Oh, here you go. You got my friend will assist you.
Just one, sir. Right. Hi there. I hope this is not too in-depth, but I was wondering, it seems you call the validators soldiers.
Yeah.
Is that an open membership or closed membership system?
As you can understand that most of the validators is in the networks, like others and everything, are closed source. And however, it went through a stringent KYC and whitelisted to prevent malicious attack. You want a bridge to be more secure in that way. So, so KYC and whitelisted is a must to be a validator to run the node for that. And it's also a way to tokenize and incentivize the validators to run, because they need to pay the electricity and everything, yeah, and the cost.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you in Austin Consensus. Please join the Twitter. Thank you.
Any question, anyone else? Nope. Thank you very much, Mr. JC. There you have it with the topic, cross-chain interoperability bridge. Okay, that was the final topic for this session. We're gonna go into a break. The break starts from 1:05 till 1:40. So we're expecting everyone here to join us maybe 5 minutes earlier, 1:45, as we move on down to our next session of the day with more topics. And of course, with our first one would be a panel discussion on NFTs and GameFi drive mass adoption of blockchain and crypto happening at 1:40. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you guys go on a break. So I'll see you again once again, all right? 1:40. If you can, come by earlier, 5 minutes, so we can kick off the day. Thank you very much.